Once upon a time, in a small village far away, there was a tiny old cottage standing alone at the edge of a dark forest. Inside that humble cottage lived a poor little girl and her loving mother. Life was very hard for them every single day. The walls of their home were cracked and worn. The roof leaked when it rained. Cold wind blew through gaps in the wooden door. Every morning, the mother walked to the old cupboard, hoping to find something to eat. But the shelves were always completely empty. The little girl often sat alone by the small window, watching others pass by. Her stomach ached with hunger day after day. The mother looked at her daughter with sorrowful eyes. She wished with all her heart to give her child just one warm meal. When night fell, the two of them huddled close together by a single flickering candle. They had only each other to hold on to. Though hunger and hardship filled their lives, a quiet hope still remained in their hearts. They believed things would change someday. One cold morning, the little girl made a brave decision. She would go into the deep forest to search for food all by herself. She hugged her mother goodbye and stepped outside. The mother watched her daughter walk away with a worried and heavy heart. The little girl walked along the narrow path, leading to the dark forest. Tall trees stood before her like giant, silent guards. She entered the forest slowly, looking around with wide, curious eyes. Sunlight filtered through the leaves above, creating golden spots. The girl wandered deeper and deeper into the woods. She searched under bushes and behind rocks, but found nothing at all to eat. Hours passed by, and she grew very tired. Her little legs ached, and her empty stomach growled loudly in the quiet forest air. The forest seemed endless and mysterious. Strange sounds echoed around her. The little girl felt small and alone among the ancient trees. But she did not give up. With hope still burning in her heart, she continued walking forward, believing she would find something soon. As the little girl walked through the forest, she suddenly noticed a soft golden light glowing between the trees up ahead. Curious and hopeful, she followed the gentle light. It led her to a small clearing filled with beautiful wildflowers and mushrooms. There, in the middle of the clearing, stood a kind old woman. She wore a long, dark green cloak and held a wooden walking stick. The old woman smiled warmly at the little girl. Her eyes were gentle and wise, shining with a mysterious but comforting magical glow. The girl felt no fear at all. Something about the old woman made her feel safe and calm, like meeting a loving grandmother. The old woman looked at the tired, hungry child with great kindness. She knew exactly why this poor little girl had come to the forest. Slowly, the old woman reached behind her cloak. She brought out a small, simple clay pot and held it gently in her wrinkled hands. The pot looked very ordinary, but a faint, magical sparkle danced around it. The little girl stared at it with wonder in her eyes. The kind old woman knelt down slowly to meet the little girl at her eye level. She spoke softly with a voice as warm as sunshine. She told the girl that this was no ordinary pot. It was a magical pot that could cook the sweetest porridge whenever she wished. The old woman taught her the secret magic words. To start cooking, she must say the special command to wake the pot from its sleep. And when there was enough porridge, she must say the words to make it stop. The girl listened carefully to every single instruction. The old woman gently placed the magic pot into the little girl's small hands. It felt warm and alive, humming softly with hidden power. The little girl's eyes filled with happy tears. She could not believe such wonderful magic was now hers to keep and use at home. She bowed deeply and thanked the old woman again and again. Her heart overflowed with gratitude for this precious and life-changing gift. The old woman smiled and nodded gently. Then she slowly faded away into the golden forest light, disappearing like a beautiful dream. The little girl ran through the forest as fast as her legs could carry her. She held the magic pot tightly against her chest with joy. She burst through the cottage door, breathless and excited. Her mother jumped up in surprise, worried something bad had happened to her. But the girl was smiling from ear to ear. She held up the little pot proudly and told her mother about the kind old woman in the forest. The mother looked confused at first. How could such a plain, simple pot be magical? But she trusted her daughter and decided to believe. The little girl placed the pot on their old wooden table. She closed her eyes, took a deep breath, and spoke the magic words clearly. Suddenly, the pot began to glow and bubble. Sweet, delicious porridge appeared inside, filling the room with the most wonderful, warm smell. The mother gasped in disbelief. Tears of joy streamed down her face. She had never seen anything so magical and wonderful in her life. Mother and daughter hugged each other tightly, laughing and crying with happiness. Their days of hunger were finally over at long last. From that day on, life changed completely for the little girl and her mother. They never had to worry about hunger ever again. Every morning, the girl would speak the magic words, and the pot would fill with warm, sweet porridge for their breakfast meal. The mother grew stronger and healthier day by day. Color returned to her pale cheeks, and her smile became bright once more. The little girl also became lively and energetic. She played outside in the sunshine, no longer weak and tired from constant hunger. Their small cottage felt warmer and happier now. Laughter filled the rooms that once knew only silence and sadness before the pot came. Sometimes they shared their porridge with poor neighbors who had nothing to eat. The magic pot brought joy to many hungry people. Days turned into weeks, and weeks turned into months. The mother and daughter lived peacefully, grateful for their magical blessing. The little girl always remembered the kind old woman. She took very good care of the magic pot, treating it like a precious treasure. One sunny morning, the little girl told her mother she wanted to go out and play with the other children in the village square. The mother smiled and nodded happily. She waved goodbye as her daughter skipped joyfully out the door into the bright daylight. The little girl ran through the village streets, laughing and playing. She had not had this much fun in such a very long time. Back at home, the mother sat alone in the quiet cottage. She looked around the empty room and suddenly felt her stomach growling. She glanced at the magic pot sitting on the table. It looked so simple and harmless. Surely she could use it by herself just once. The mother tried hard to remember the magic words her daughter had taught her. She thought she knew them well enough to try alone. She walked slowly toward the pot, feeling a little nervous but also very hungry. Her empty stomach made the decision easy for her. The mother picked up the pot and placed it in front of her. She took a deep breath and prepared to speak the words she remembered. The mother spoke the magic words to start the pot. She remembered those words perfectly, and the pot began to cook right away. Sweet, warm porridge bubbled up inside the pot. The delicious smell filled the cottage, and the mother smiled with satisfaction at first. But then the porridge kept rising higher and higher. It began to overflow the edges of the pot and spill onto the wooden table. The mother panicked and tried to remember the words to make it stop, but her mind went completely blank with fear and confusion. She said many different words, hoping one would work. But nothing she said could stop the pot from cooking more and more porridge. The porridge poured over the table and fell to the floor in thick waves. It spread across the room faster than the mother could move. She backed away in horror as the porridge covered everything. Chairs, pots, and shoes disappeared under the rising, creamy white flood. The mother cried out for help, but no one could hear her. The magic pot just kept cooking endlessly, showing no signs of stopping. The porridge rose so high that it pushed open the cottage door. A river of sweet porridge flowed out into the village streets. The thick, creamy flood spread through the narrow lanes. It swallowed gardens, fences, and carts, leaving everything covered in white. Villagers ran out of their homes in shock and confusion. They could not believe their eyes as porridge flooded past their doorsteps. Children pointed and laughed at first, thinking it was funny. But soon everyone realized this was a serious disaster for the village. The porridge kept coming without end. It filled the market square and covered the old stone fountain in the center of the village. The little girl heard the screaming from far away. She stopped playing and looked toward her home with fear growing in her young heart. She saw the massive wave of porridge flooding the village. In that moment, she knew exactly what had happened at home with the pot. Without wasting another second, the little girl ran as fast as she could toward her cottage. She had to stop the pot before too late. The little girl pushed through the porridge, flooding the streets. She finally reached her cottage and burst through the sticky door. Inside, the mother stood helpless in the corner, surrounded by porridge. The magic pot sat on the table, still cooking without mercy. The little girl waded through the thick porridge toward the pot. She took a deep breath and spoke the magic words loud and clear. Instantly, the pot stopped bubbling. The porridge stopped rising. A peaceful silence fell over the cottage after the chaos finally ended. The mother rushed to her daughter and held her tightly. Tears of relief streamed down her face as she thanked her brave little girl. Outside, the village stood covered in a thick blanket of sweet porridge. But thankfully, everyone was safe and no one had been hurt. For many days after, people had to eat their way through the porridge to move around. It became a funny story told for many years. The little girl and her mother learned an important lesson that day. Magic is wonderful, but it must always be used with great care.